evening, friends. Welcome again from my side to Bangalore for those of you who came from outside, and welcome to Eagleton. And I'm looking forward to the golf on Saturday morning. I don't know about how many of you guys are looking forward to that. What an outside-in evening, right? We started with Paul talking about everything that is outside of what we as technology people usually are occupied with. Is that right? And I'm sure you found that all very refreshing. That was followed by Sanjay, who drove completely deep into what technologists are occupied with.
That's right.
And on this panel, I think what we'll try and do is we'll try and go outside a little bit, but we know we have to keep the lights on as well, so we'll have to come back inside. So we'll try and see how we can go out, come back, and just try and balance it out, but basically leave you all a little more aware with what I think the subject is cementing the role of the Chief Information Officer. My thoughts are that with whatever we've discussed and with what is happening in the digital world, the CIO's role is evolving. I'm not sure whether you can actually cement it, but I don't think there's been a more exciting time in technology than the times that we are going through. And I think you can cement the thought that you will be at the center stage of whatever is happening out there. So on that note, I want to start on the outside. I want to start with the happiest mind on the panel. Mm-hmm. Gopi, you've been moving around and you've been seeing change happening outside. Can you just share what's going on, what your take is on it?
Yeah. Before I share my experience, let me comment on this, the topic itself, the cementing the CIO role, right? Cementing is basically fixing. I would say it is like every organization says that let's have a 3-year strategy, and every year they do 3-year strategy. So I would say there is nothing like cementing. As you were saying, it is transforming, and we have to adapt. In Paul's presentation, we saw Darwin's theory, right? So how quickly we can adapt to the external world and bring that in to make our organization smarter, connect with the customer, understand the customer, reach the customer faster, better, and bring an outside-in approach and make the organization secure. I would say CIOs have these 3 key roles.
Good.
And CIOs are transforming themselves to that.
Great. So you want to talk about the experience and what you're seeing happening outside?
Sure. So in my role, I got the fortune of connecting with various CIOs, now CDOs. When I say CDOs, it's Chief Digital Officers organization. It is pretty evident that all of them are adopting to the digital transformation journey. The earlier lights on budget of 80%, 90%, and the CIO role is primarily looking after the run the business, and very less of change the business is going away. If anybody is only focusing on run the business scenario, there is no role for the CIO in such kind of organization. Our organization itself is going down in one or the other way. When I started interacting with, for example, I'll take a European large travel company. They have about 200 different brands as their business. And for initial 3-4 years, that is previous to this year, they were only focusing on the internal organization, strengthening the processes, becoming the process smarter, and then maybe making the organization agile, but still they are not able to compete in the external world with the huge competition which is playing in the travel place. They realized 12 months ago that if we look at outside in, if we connect with our customer, if we can make our goal as the customer experience journey as our goal, then probably we would make difference. Within 12 months, they have seen a drastic change in their business model, in their positioning, in their business strategy itself is now evolving from customer back into the organization. When I say customer back into the organization, they are enabling their processes to connect with the customer faster, accepting the customer feedback faster, reacting to the customer, and then reaching out to customer, knowing the customer through their profiles, and then providing a predictive analytics is also helping them to reach the customer
Okay,
faster.
so great. So we're actually, completely focusing on where the customer is today.
Yeah.
Right? I want to park it right there and move to Anup, who's with a very traditional brick and mortar organization, which is a manufacturing organization, global organization headquartered out of the US. Anup, let's move inside, from this outside approach. How important is, operational excellence? Can we have someone switch Anup's mic on, please?
Hello. Yeah, sure. So, I'll bring two perspective to that role. One, you said cementing the role of a CIO. So, when you take a typical example, cement need a lot of water to, stabilize, right? And that's the inside view. So, as a CIO, definitely you need to run the mill. You need to ensure, the lights are on. You need to outsource things which you feel are more monotonous in nature, and make sure, the risk kind of, get mitigated. And at the same time, the other side of the coin is, you need to ensure you are partnering with the business out here, right? And inside view again is CIO today carrying any business goals as part of his, overall goal which he gets from the CEO organization, or the so-called the CFO organization. And normally CIOs are reporting into CFOs nowadays, most of the CIOs. That's one way of looking at it. Other is, does CIO have enough time available today, right, to start focusing on all the new things and all the things, which are running around, whether you call it as SMAC or, call it as cloud and all, good things. Definitely we need to move into that. It's like a race, 100-meter race, and the shortest time is the one who wins the race, right, and the winner right out here. So, from an internal perspective, you need to first create the framework very strong, in order to make sure CIO is getting time to start thinking about moving into the new arena of activities. And it could be innovation. We heard Paul talking about it. We had Sanjay talking about in deep about what cloud bring to the table out here. Everything is really good. At the end of the day, CIO is answerable, right? We need to make sure he's able to deliver on time with cost, quality delivery, right? And these are all good buzzwords. We have been hearing them from last 2 decades. But at the end of the day, it is very important, when you see the inside perspective, the current mill is running, the lights are on, right? The one differentiator which I think CIO now can start bringing in is creating a culture in the workforce around the business acumen, I would say, maybe a different perspective. The CIO workforce, which is under CIO, is heavily focused on making sure the server is up and running, the 99.999 is meeting and all, which is all good. Business really does not care about it, right? That's all good, I know. Does the workforce knows what is the impact of that box going down today? Am I able to run inventory? Am I able to ship my product out of the... And that's where CIO will be able to put a lot of effort around putting new things around, whether it's innovation or SMAC or other kind of activities.
Sanjay is with TCS Corporate Technology Office. You've had some experience around putting together a center of excellence. Can you share that, please?
No, I mean, I'll put a perspective to it, because it was always a journey, because we never you never reach an end point. So I'll take a couple of cues from what both Paul and Sanjay talked about, and they talked about core differentiation, then we talked about system of record, and then going on to system of differentiation. So classically, I look at it, there is a system of record, which means, you have an ERP in place, a transaction system in place, and then there's a system of differentiation. Now here comes the challenge. The system of differentiation, as a CIO, I'll have a couple of things that I want to do within my organization as a system of differentiation, which is, the virtualization is an example. and then to map it to how it translates into the organization's objective is a major challenge. The other system of differentiation I would see is from an organizational perspective. Those are things that need to be imbibed from the organization per se. The third is the innovation per se, the system of innovation, which is where you'll actually really shed the the hat of reduction of total cost of ownership, going into actually see where you can have an impact on the revenue that the organization is earning. Even if it is 3%, I mean, up to 3% is even regarded as a good indicator that yes, you have the role of the CIO has evolved. And in terms of, I'll give a couple of examples in terms of differentiation. Francis, he couple of seasons back, I think he obtained an objective of RPO of 1 hour against 12 hours, since you put up something on RPO up on the slide. So that's an immense system of differentiation, and which gives a lot of confidence to the organization.
I want to take a reality check there. I can't see the audience. Can I see the audience, please? Can we have some lights on this side?
Yeah,
Can I get a show of
for a
hands?
change,
How many
there's too
of
much
you are
of spotlight
responsible?
on this round. Yeah.
How many are responsible for revenue? How many you have KRA has revenue impact there? That's about 40%, I think, 30-40%. So still not high enough, I guess.
The system of, if you come to the point of revenue, since you brought the point here, this is twofold. One is an evolved CIO could actually run a P&L by himself, or he could actually contribute into a business objective of, it could be, the CMO, or it could be part of the CEO's organization. Couple of examples. A large telecom company is getting, is wanting to translate the customer acquisition, its own customer acquisition, so that it can bill its own customers 2 days in advance. And if you take a retail customer base going up to upwards of 2 million, that makes a major difference. So there, IT can come and make a play. And if you bring a slight difference into that number, you have actually won the heart of the CEO of the organization. Today, the big challenge that I see is from the perspective of lots of budget dollars go into the CMO's pocket, because he thinks the commodity part of the IT business is residing with the CIO. Let him run with the lights out. Let me run with the, be close to the market and increase the, throughput.
So you think the maintenance spend is where the IT budget is being focused on, and the innovative spend is where is happening with marketing function, which is looking outside?
And that's the perception that I get to see, in terms of where more and more IT dollars, in terms of where the marketing spend goes in terms of IT systems, there is a propensity that CMOs are actually, holding that pocket. So what does that mean? That means that, in your internal stakeholders, you have to work with the CFO. In terms of financial engineering, you talked about, moving from CapEx to OpEx. And the CFO also has a challenge, moving that OpEx, reducing that OpEx down. So there's a dual whammy that you're facing. In terms of this, the CEO, I talked about that, the billing improvement in terms of a telecom company. It could be, not everything is digitization. Today, if you say that I want to automate a thing, those days are gone. You have to move from digitization to what, there's another term which is enforced, which is digitalization. I'll give two examples. One is a large telecom, not a large, a niche telecom value-added provider has actually, the CIO of that organization has gone ahead and is offering voice and data services to customers on the fly, using columnar databases, analytics. So that's a big change, and that's how the marketing organization is enthused that here is an IT gentleman who's working side by side with me to deliver the same. The other is obviously the tomato pizza example that Paul spoke of. Then there is a travel integrator. We all hear of our own virtual cab service, but there is a new there's a virtual cab service which aggregates the consumers along with the drivers. So that's digitalization. That's not just plain automation of the process. So these are things that we have to look, niche areas that we need to look at.
Again, you're actually talking about reaching where the customer is. So I want to come to Francis. Francis, we'll be talking about the customer. I am assuming 20% of you are from Bangalore and 80% actually came in from Kempegowda International Airport today, this afternoon, somewhere in the day. And Francis is the CIO of Kempegowda International Airport. How many of you felt like you were customers when you came in, and were you happy with the experience? It's been a dramatic shift, isn't it, from the previous airport that we used to have and what we've got now, and how it's improvised over time. Pretty fast, I would say, actually, with the new terminal coming up. We were talking earlier, Francis, what is the perspective that CIOs need to take to move out of their comfort zone to make themselves more business aligned, more customer aligned? Hello?
Please. Good evening. I would tend to first make one observation. If you roll back in terms of timeline, and maybe almost every decade, we have had disruptions. So a pun acronym of that got turned of a CIO is career is over. But you have seen that the CEO have that adaptive flavor in each one of them, that when they said with the mainframe era, mainframe is over, or client-server technology, and then desktop and laptop, and then you have the internet. So in every stage of the journey, there has to necessarily, either because of force of circumstances or the business requirement, that made the CIO to adapt. And then as things evolved, as business evolved, and borders became blurred, and with the more advanced technology disruptions, we have got to see that it's no longer within the house in terms of lights on, which need to run the services, but the customer has come to the forefront. And when the customer, be it an extended enterprise customer or a direct retail customer, it is necessarily incumbent on the enterprise to engage. And hence, consequently, the customer experience becomes a quotient for a CEO to work on with the business. And consequently, the CEO gets to necessarily be adept at the business and identify the untapped areas, and also identify which areas would bring dividends or value to the enterprise. So I think to that extent, CEO needs to wear different caps or glasses, so to speak, and use a different spectrum to really look at what is that value that I could bring to the organization with the business. Because today, with the cloud offerings that we are so much has been focused on, the business has got an opportunity to go directly and avail the service. For example, let's say an HR or even finance or a CIO. The marketplace and to be agile, it is very much required to work in tandem. And I reckon that's where, when you talked about the key performance metrics, I think one of the metrics, apart from the value for enterprise or to the stakeholder or the return to the investor, I reckon one of the KPIs that would get added is what is the customer value, the feedback that you get from a customer. When you talked about customer acceptance in the earlier session, I reckon the same way how the customer has accepted your service standards and service quality, be it on the cloud or be it as a service provider. I think these would eventually make the CIOs to be alive to the surroundings and to take that initiative to give the desired outcomes which the business expects. And I think that's a journey by itself, not a destination.
Great. So the message I'm taking, at least from Francis and from what Anup mentioned earlier, is that we need to get closer to our businesses and be able to help the business get closer to the customer. We need to make sure our IT teams are also aligned in doing that rather than just looking at the inside technology, and which also means that we must be able to depend on our partner system, which is, you mentioned the cloud, the service providers, the IBMs of the world, in being able to meet that expectation. Sanjay, you had a question from the audience that said cloud adoption is low. Do you think we as CIOs are not moving out of our comfort zones? Do you think that the service providers are still not, delivering what they're promising? What do you think the reality is?
So let me add a couple of points over here, right? So adding to what all the gentlemen said, right? We in IBM do a study of all the CXOs, right, which includes CIOs as well. In fact, one of the recent study which is done by IBM Institute of Business Value, right, we interviewed around 4,000 CXOs across globe, across industries, out of which 1,600 were CIOs. And the question which was asked, right, in terms of what is the changes they are seeing, what are the expectations they are seeing coming from their top level. I think the bottom line message which was coming, especially from CIOs, was that CIO's role is no more a back end, right? The business objectives is aligned to be in front lines, right? They want their CFOs, CEOs, expect them to be more of a trusted partner, right? It is not only the external facing, which is your customer, right, which is in terms of enhancing the customer experience, but also CIOs have got a challenge in terms of the workforce which they are addressing, right? And now the scenario, especially after the cloud coming in, right, you have got so much of empowerment done that where your IT manager itself can really do a lot of things without you being in loop, right, in terms of getting an infra or getting any of the services available, right? So those were the critical points which we really revealed, and some of the Indian CIOs were also being interviewed as part of the survey, was that CIO's role is now moving more towards being front of the business. They want to really ensure that they are treated as a trusted partner by all the business executives, right? So that was one of the things which really came out as a revealing point. And the second point in terms of cloud adoption, I don't think CIOs are still in the comfort zone, to be honest, right? We talk day in, day out with a lot of CIOs because everybody has understood the importance, everybody has understood the need to leverage the disruptive technologies, because it's not only one enterprise, it's multiple enterprises focusing on whether it is cloud, whether it's on mobile, whether it's on analytics, because there's a lot of things happening, like the case of analytics. So there are a lot of things which is coming from various social media channels, right? You have got Twitter, you have got Facebook. People want to really analyze the data and see that what is the meaningful inference they can get, right? Which will help in terms of getting their business better, getting closer to the customer, right? So it's ultimately driven by the business objectives, where I see a lot of CIOs getting aligned. It's not only from the cloud perspective, and I see a big change in India as such. As I said, when we used to talk to CIOs 4 years back, the first thing about cloud was only desktop virtualization, right? Now we are in a state where CIOs have understood, they are seeing the benefits getting across to their end users, which can be their internal to the organization or to the external facing customers by leveraging technologies like cloud.
Gopi, can you give us some examples based on what we've heard so far, where transformation has occurred, where people who own the technology organization have been able to bridge that gap and go beyond it?
Sure. All of us, when we spoke, and invariably we ended up talking about customer.
Absolutely.
Right? And then now the paradigm shift has happened from B2B to B2C. Now it is C2B, right? So that is what is going to happen. Let me take airport as an example today, where the transformation has happened and is happening in various places, and probably it's a good example for our Bangalore airport as well. Now airports, typically we use as just a place where we enter, take the flight, come back and go out. Maybe with a better infrastructure, we spend some time in doing some shopping through retail. Now, if Airports have the best infrastructure to know the customer, know people who comes in, who goes out. Can they know them and can they become their travel companion? Some of the airports are, especially in the United States, they have transformed to make sure that they understand the travelers, become their customers. And once they understand, they will become their companion from their door to the destination, make sure that they are comfortable. It could be taxi, it could be another connecting flight, and then they make sure that they understand the customer, so what kind of preferences they do from a retail perspective. So it will help them, probably giving them right coupons so that they increase the retail sales in the airport. So what actually happens is that the CIO organization, the technology organization, making themselves a companion of these travelers, has enhanced or rather attracted more retailers into the airport as an area, inside outside. One. Number two, because of the number of people traveling through that airport, the airlines also making that as a hub today. So that's the transformation a technology organization can make and create
service
business.
Integration actually,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, it is a service integration. You can say B2B, whatever, B2C, but primarily it is driven from the customer back, knowing the customer into your enterprise. So I would still term it as C2B. That is what is happening. I'm just taking that as one example because we see, we have a co-panelist from a airport authority here.
So does anybody have a question at this point?
There was mention about the chief marketing officer becoming a digital officer as such and taking over targets. What is happening is that you also have the core business heads who are doing their own business and the marketing guy coming in and saying, look, I'm getting you additional revenue. What I see is a difference of something like non-cooperation between these two guys, because somebody else from the marketing team is taking credit for additional business, which is eventually going through the operations done by the core guy. So how do you address such a scenario so that these two guys can actually work in an aligned fashion?
I want to relate that question to something earlier before somebody wants to answer that. You know, Paul mentioned that the way the iPod became successful by saying 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? See, the CIOs always had the technology, but they always marketed it as SEO and SEM and things like that. Whereas what the marketing guy did, he picked it up and he said, I can get you so many leads. That's really what happened, if you ask me. But let me see if somebody else wants to take a shot.
Yeah, let me share my views on this. CMOs, I agree with you. CMOs have the good budget, and then instead of they looking inwards, primarily they are looking outwards in terms of how I can use external vendors to quickly realize my dream of reaching out to customer, making the ads happen, and hence influencing the sales, right? And then, as some of us said, dashboards, right? Real-time dashboards or aggregated dashboards and so on and so forth. Answering to your question of what CIOs have to do to make sure that they work together is, before CMOs go outside, the CIOs can go to CMO and share various ideas. Here are the technology platforms which we have built or which we have partnered, or these are some of the innovative ideas which we have brought in, which will help you reach your customers, which will help you provide a platform where it is interactive. Most of the CMOs organization today is looking at spending money in various types of ads, of reaching out. All of them are one way. how do they loop back? CIOs have the advantage of looking through and thinking through technology and say, how do I connect back with your consumers, end consumers, understand them, and then link them, build loyalty, and so on and so forth. CIOs have the advantage. It is in CIO's hand to innovate, think innovatively, and provide such kind of platforms to CMO, and CMO will not go outside when there is an advantage inside.
Yes, Sanjay.
Yeah, I'll just step back a little and address it from two perspectives. One is obviously that depends on the evolution of the CIO within the organization. And so if at this point of time the CIO is managing his own organization more by exception, I mean, leaving the routine work to his DRs, and he's built in the trust and credibility of the rest of the organization, I think he should look at one or two. Life is that there will be detractors and there will be influencers who are positive influencers. So pick up need not be always so it's a long drawn game actually. Need not always be the CMO. It could be the CFO or it could be the operations head, and see that part of your the innovation center that you're built in. You can have repeatable processes, or it can be a custom innovation, in which case you'll have to devote your best people, which we normally don't do. We say, okay, I need an engagement manager, I put him in charge of a unit. It has to be one of the best guys to really and orchestrate that one or two proof of concepts with whoever the the influencer is, one or two, and go whole hog. Use part of your budget, to also say that yes, this is what I've done for you, which means that there will be one or two business areas where you'll need to do a little deep dive. Obviously, you can't be everywhere all the time, and so that is one way of actually doing that creeping in the credibility stack with the rest of the peers within the organization. Second is when you talk to the CMOs, and obviously they say that we know the market best. You don't tell me what I need to get from the marketplace. So admit that yes, he knows, and in order to gain his confidence, play a little second fiddle in this case. And you tell him that, okay, you have found a right provider, and I have this governance around it, which I'm running the rest of the organization. Let me play. Let me manage it from the, I use the word back end, and let us together see that this project is a success. So typically, CMOs are a little aggressive, assertive. I don't know whether there is CMOs in the organization or not, because they are market facing. And the CIO community in general probably falls a little short. So it's again a mix of behavior. So we have to look at it, play second fiddle, make sure he wins, and whatever you do to make him win probably will stand to build that credibility next time around, along with the parallel work that you're doing with other peers within the organization, whether it's the CFO or the operations head. So it's a chess game actually, and you are actually starting two moves behind. That's the challenge in this case, and it has to be really hard fought. There is no two other way out of it. So, but I have heard lots of, I have seen publications where people say that, take charge and, drive the business. I think we'll have to separate the aspirational from the delusional. So, otherwise, there are people who are doing their business, they also know, but pick up one or two small areas where you go deep dive and make that happen. Don't do it for
So what you're saying is let this, if the marketing folks have got digital right, let them run with that. We look at something else where you can, because there's still a lot more. You talked about digitalization, right?
Yeah.
Digitalization is a vast area which is not just about getting leads in.
Absolutely.
That's a very good question. In fact, I met the head of HDFC Life Marketing last week, and he's now titled Head of Digital Media, E-Commerce and Marketing. Any other questions in the audience? Such controversial questions are welcome.
Do raise your hands. I'll make sure I have a mic over to you.
It looks like everybody's role is cemented well here. Yeah?
I'll just
Surely you have
make
questions
one
for
observation
Sanjay,
for
right?
the update, since it was made a mention regarding integration of services. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that if you land at Bangalore or you want to come to Mysore, there is connectivity even by road in terms of VMTC OLO. I also want to tell people, since I reckon 70% have landed at Bangalore, but have taken the flight back, data point, the highest sale of diamonds in India, and Shoppers Stop, any location in India, not just at airport, is at Bangalore airport. So you can pick up a diamond for your wife or your daughter or anyone. Thanks.
Good data points.
So whether you're successful as a CIO and be on the board or not, you will certainly be successful in the
At
house.
home, at home.
Excuse me. I just wanted to share my thought that a few people said that you don't influence role of CMO or something like that. But I think cementing starts when any CIO is being looked at what value he is adding for the customers of the organization. So any CIO or every CIO should look towards not only fixed role that what CMO is doing, what CFO is doing or what. In whatever way we can add value to organization's customer, possibly the cementing starts.
Absolutely, I think some of us
Yeah.
did mention that point, that customer, is this
Yeah.
point.
So that's why, as Francis said, that since his value addition is visible directly to the customer, so people feel that his role is enhanced. And similarly, since I am manufacturing organization, where directly value addition to the customer is always via CMO. So I have to play a role where I need to ask, if I do this, whether this enhances your customer value, or is it adding something to your customer. Once he says yes, that efforts is always recognized. That's what I just wanted to add in the thought. Thank you.
Yeah. That's correct. Of course, does anybody else have anything else to ask? You have a question, yeah?
Yeah, just two observations. That usually what happens is even the CEO is looking at the CIO, and usually what they look at it is that there's a bit of inertia in changing for the CIO, in the sense that he doesn't want to change the processes in the organization. So sometimes this also looks at the credentials of the CIO gets questioned, because he's not taking the next step forward. He usually wants to stick with the same processes and the services. So one is the inertia in terms of A, upgrading his knowledge, and B is in changing the processes. So I think that's where the CIO is just losing, I feel, in the organization, and sometimes gets bypassed by the CFO or the CMO or the whatever, because he doesn't he wants to keep it at the back, he doesn't want to get it in the forefront. Maybe there could be budget issues, but that's how the driving gets stopped.
Is that similar to not moving out of comfort zones that we are used to?
I would like to respond to that, in a different way. So let's assume that a business unit is, you are working as a partner to the business unit and you have come across a solution along with one of those business unit heads who look at you positively. So, and the next step is there an opportunity to horizontalize the solution across other business units? This is one area business unit heads don't bother. And if you are able to crack that piece, so next time, if the CEO thinks that this is some, some solution that he needs to get, some initiative that he needs to run across business units, the CIO would be the default, person to go to. So this is another niche area that one would consciously look at. And I would say, I was talking about those engagement managers, send the brightest to look at those holes, because no business unit is going to look at what will happen in his area, and which will also impact another area.
And that goes back to the trusted partner.
Yeah, I agree with Sanjay. So the travel company which I refer to, where they have 200 different brands, this is exactly what they are doing in terms of repeatability across multiple brands. When once they onboard a brand, onboarding a next brand reduces the time by just 50% already. So That's one.
Custom innovation, try to make it repeatable wherever
So
I'm
are there any final thoughts from the panel before I summarize? Okay, I think I came over with, any burning question that can't wait for over drinks? I had 4 takeaways and a bonus takeaway, and I'll keep the bonus one last. One is that we need to have responsibility for revenue impact to be more meaningful, right? The second is we must have responsibility to enhance the customer's experience, and that must be visible. The third is to have a very important support system with our vendors so that we can focus more on the business and leave a lot of the lights on to that system. And even leverage them strategically if possible. Because cloud can be a strategic enabler. I think a lot of strategy that is happening outside is happening on the cloud, not inside. We need to become trusted partners of the business, which I think we said in many forms. And finally, the bonus takeaway, visit Shoppers Stop and make your wife happy. Thank you all.
That too at the airport.
At the airport, yeah.
At the airport.
Yeah.
All at the airport.